The night my parents were buried, I didn't cry in front of anyone. Not at the cemetery. Not at the house filled with relatives pretending to care. I cried later, when my own brother looked me in the eyes and said, "You don't belong here anymore." That was the moment I understood something terrifying. Losing my parents wasn't the worst thing that could happen to me. Being unwanted by my own blood was. My name is Ethan Miller. I am 19 years old. I lost both my parents in a car accident on a rainy highway just outside Chicago. One moment, they were arguing about which restaurant to stop at. The next, they were gone. Just like that, no warnings, no goodbye, just silence. The funeral passed like a blur. Black umbrellas, wet shoes, empty words like, "They're in a better place." People hugged me, but none of them stayed long enough to feel the weight settling inside my chest. My older brother, Ryan, stood beside me the entire time. Calm, composed, almost untouched. He was 7 years older than me, confident, well-dressed, already working at a mid-level corporate job. Everyone treated him like the man of the house now. I didn't think much of it then. I trusted him. He was my brother. After the funeral, we returned to the house. We grew up in the same house where my mother used to wake me up for school and my father fixed broken furniture on weekends. I thought it would still be home. I was wrong. 3 days later, Ryan asked me to sit down at the kitchen table. The same table where we once celebrated birthdays, shared late-night snacks, and laughed at stupid jokes. This time, there was no warmth. "I've been thinking," he said, folding his hands calmly. "This house, it's too much responsibility. And honestly, you're old enough to figure things out on your own." I stared at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He exhaled slowly, as if I were a burden he had to explain patiently. "I mean, you can't stay here anymore." The words didn't hit me all at once. They came in waves. "You're not a kid," he continued. "I have my own life, my own plans. I can't carry you." Carry me? I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him if he remembered the nights I stayed up with him when he failed his college exams. If he remembered how our parents treated us equally, but I said nothing. I packed my clothes that same night. No relatives offered help. No one asked where I would go. They just assumed Ryan had it handled or worse, that I deserved it. I slept on a friend's couch for a week, then another, then another. Eventually, the couches ran out. By the second month, I was sleeping in my car, an old, rusted sedan my father had bought years ago. I worked part-time at a grocery store during the day and cleaned offices at night. My hands smelled like detergent and exhaustion. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Ryan's voice. "You don't belong here anymore." That sentence followed me everywhere. I stopped calling family. I stopped checking social media. I stopped hoping someone would change their mind. What I didn't stop doing was remembering. Remembering how easily I was erased. Remembering how disposable I became the moment my parents were gone. And slowly, painfully, something else began to grow inside me. Not anger, not hatred, determination. If they had written me off as nothing, then I would become something they could never ignore. Not today, not tomorrow, but one day. Sleeping in a car teaches you things no school ever could. You learn how cold nights can slice through your bones, even in summer. You learn which parking lots are safest, which security guards look the other way, and which streets you should never stop on. Most of all, you learn how invisible you are to the world. Weeks turned into months. Every morning, I woke up before sunrise, wiped the fog from the windshield, and changed clothes in the back seat like a criminal hiding evidence. By day, I was a grocery store clerk. By night, I scrubbed office floors that belonged to people who would never notice my existence. Sometimes, while mopping marble floors under bright corporate lights, I imagined my brother sitting in one of those offices one day, confident and respected. The thought didn't make me angry anymore. It made me focused. I stopped wasting energy on emotions that didn't move me forward. I started saving every dollar. No coffee, no fast food, no comfort, just survival. One night, while cleaning an empty conference room, I noticed a whiteboard still covered in business diagrams, charts, arrows, Numbers. Someone had left behind an entire presentation about scaling startups and investment strategies. I stared at it longer than I should have. I didn't understand everything, but something inside me clicked. That night, instead of sleeping, I sat in my car and searched online using the library Wi-Fi nearby. Business basics, entrepreneurship, how companies grow, how money actually works. For the first time since my parents died, my mind wasn't drowning in grief. It was learning. I began spending my breaks at the public library instead of resting. I read books about finance, psychology, leadership. I listened to free lectures, watched interviews with people who had built something from nothing. They all had one thing in common. They had been underestimated. That realization felt personal. 6 months later, my car finally broke down. I remember sitting on the curb, staring at smoke rising from the hood, my hands shaking not from fear, but exhaustion. I had no savings for repairs, no one to call. That night, I slept on a park bench. Rain soaked through my jacket. My phone battery died. For the first time in a long while, I let myself feel the weight of everything. I wondered if my brother ever thought about me, if my parents would be ashamed of where I was. And then, something inside me snapped not loudly, but permanently. I stood up the next morning with a single decision. I would never depend on anyone again. I found a shelter that offered temporary beds in exchange for maintenance work. It wasn't comfortable, but it was a roof. More importantly, it gave me stability. With stability came clarity. I started freelancing online small tasks at first. Data entry, research, anything I could do from a borrowed computer. The pay was terrible, but it was mine. Then one night, a small opportunity appeared. A local business owner needed help managing inventory data. He didn't want an expert. He wanted someone hungry enough to care. I cared. I worked harder than anyone else he had hired. I noticed inefficiencies others ignored, suggested small changes, saved him money without being asked. 2 months later, he offered me a full-time role. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a step forward. I moved out of the shelter, rented a tiny room with a shared bathroom, bought a used laptop. For the first time in a year, I slept on a real bed. I didn't celebrate. I kept going. While others relaxed after work, I studied. While others spent money, I invested time. I learned how systems worked, how businesses failed, how people thought. I learned one painful truth above all else. The world doesn't reward effort. It rewards results. And I was done being invisible. I started seeing patterns, opportunities, gaps in the market, small ideas that could grow if executed right. I wrote everything down. Every night, I stared at the ceiling and imagined a future version of myself, calm, powerful, untouchable, not rich for luxury, but rich in control. Control over my time, control over my dignity, control over my life. I didn't want revenge in the traditional sense. I didn't want apologies. I didn't want explanations. I wanted success so undeniable that silence would be the only response left. And somewhere deep inside me, I knew this was only the beginning. Success doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives quietly, like a question you're either brave enough to answer or too afraid to try. By the time I was 22, my life looked stable from the outside. I had a steady job, a rented room, and enough money to survive. To most people, that would have been enough, but survival was never my goal. I noticed something while working for the small business owner. Every month, the same problems kept repeating. Wasted inventory, poor vendor coordination, outdated tracking systems. Everyone complained, but no one fixed it properly. So I built something. At night, after work, I taught myself basic coding and spreadsheet automation. It took weeks of frustration, broken formulas, and mistakes, but eventually, I created a simple system that tracked inventory in real time and predicted shortages before they happened. I showed it to my boss, expecting skepticism. Instead, he stared at the screen in silence. This could save us thousands, he said. Within 3 months, profits increased, mistakes decreased. Vendors became more reliable. Word spread. Other small businesses started asking who built the system. My boss gave them my name. That was when I made my first real decision of risk. I quit. Not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly, with a handshake and gratitude. I took the small severance I had saved and registered a one-person consulting service. No office, no employees, just me and a laptop. The first few months were terrifying. Some weeks I had clients, other weeks I didn't. I learned quickly that talent wasn't enough. You needed confidence, negotiation skills, and resilience. I failed. A lot. I underpriced my work, trusted the wrong people, delivered more than I was paid for. But every failure taught me something. By my mid-20s, I had a handful of loyal clients. Then a medium-sized company took notice. They didn't want a system. They wanted a scalable solution. It was bigger than anything I had done before. If I failed, my reputation would collapse. If I succeeded, everything would change. I worked like a man possessed. 16-hour days. Endless debugging. Sleepless nights. I didn't attend social events. I didn't date. I didn't look back. When the system launched, it worked flawlessly. The company offered to acquire the software. The number they put on the table made my hands shake. I didn't accept immediately. I negotiated. That was the moment I realized something powerful. I was no longer the kid sleeping in his car. The deal went through. I paid off my debts, moved into a real apartment, hired 2 contractors, reinvested everything. That was the birth of my company. The first time my name appeared on a business article online, I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I was proud, but because I remembered being unwanted. And yet, the past wasn't done with me. One evening, I received a message I hadn't expected from my brother. "Hey, long time. Heard you're doing well. Maybe we should talk." I didn't reply, not because I was angry, because I wasn't ready. Success isn't loud revenge. It's preparation, and my story wasn't finished yet. People don't come back when they miss you. They come back when they need you. I didn't reply to my brother's message for weeks. Not out of spite, out of clarity. I had learned the cost of emotional impulsiveness, and I wasn't about to pay it again. Life moved fast after that first big deal. My company grew quietly. No flashy ads, no public drama, just results. Clients trusted me because I delivered when others failed. Systems I built reduced losses, increased efficiency, and created stability. That reputation spread faster than any marketing campaign. By 27, I was running a small but powerful firm. Not famous, not extravagant, but respected. And then the calls started. First, from an aunt who hadn't spoken to me since the funeral. Then, from a cousin who once laughed when I slept in my car. They all started the same way. "I've always believed in you. We're family after all. Your parents would be proud." I listened, quietly. None of them asked how I survived. None of them apologized. Then came my brother. We met at a cafe downtown. Neutral territory. He arrived early, wearing a polished smile and an expensive watch. He looked successful, but tired. "I didn't know you'd come this far," he said. I nodded. No emotion, no stories. He hesitated before continuing. "I'm in a bit of trouble." Of course he was. He explained it slowly. Bad investments, risky loans, a business partner who disappeared. He needed money, not a little. A lot. "I'll pay you back," he said quickly. "I just need time." I asked one question. "Why now?" He looked away. "I didn't think you'd make it." There it was, the truth, stripped of excuses. I stood up. "I'll think about it," I said. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I felt guilty, but because I finally understood something my parents never taught us. Blood doesn't define loyalty, choices do. I requested the legal documents related to my parents' estate. The will, the trust, everything. What I found changed everything, and it was time to stop being silent. The truth has a strange way of waiting. It doesn't rush. It doesn't warn. It simply sits in silence until the moment it's needed most. When I requested my parents' estate documents, I expected paperwork, legal language, numbers, nothing emotional. I was wrong. Buried deep inside the files was a clause I had never been told about. My parents had planned everything. They knew Ryan was ambitious. They knew I was quieter, more patient. They had worried privately about what would happen if something ever happened to them, so they had done something unexpected. The house was never meant to belong to Ryan alone. It was placed in a trust. And the trustee? Me. The condition was simple. Ryan could live there and manage it only if he took care of me until I turned 25. If he failed, even once the ownership would transfer. He failed on day 3. The moment he kicked me out, the trust was legally violated. Ryan never checked, never asked, never imagined I'd survive long enough to matter. I closed the file and sat in silence for a long time. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. 2 weeks later, I called a meeting. Ryan, our relative, the family lawyer, they thought it was about helping Ryan financially. They were wrong. The lawyer spoke calmly, professionally. Each word landed like a controlled explosion. Ryan's face drained of color. "That's not possible," he whispered. But it was. The house, the remaining assets, the final authority, they were mine. I didn't take the house. I sold it. The money wasn't revenge. It was closure. I paid off my company's expansion, funded scholarships for kids who aged out of foster care, built something that would outlive bitterness. Ryan tried to apologize. I listened. Then I said the only thing that mattered. "You didn't lose because of the will. You lost the day you decided I was disposable." I walked away. No shouting, no victory speech, no audience, just peace. Some endings don't need drama. They need distance. And for the first time in my life, I felt free.